Welcome to Wonkas Math session, guys. Psych. Kinda, just kidding. Today we actually are going to be talking about some math. But not the kind of math that you think. Not like 2 plus 2 equals 4. But more so the relevance in math and bluffing. And how this can help you with your go-to work. Essentially, this section is going to highlight proper angles and how Fibonacci relates to those angles. So for those of you that don't know what Fibonacci is, or the golden ratio, it's the mathematical equation or sequence of numbers that every living thing stems from, for the most part. Flowers growing out of a root are growing in a spiral. Seashell, or even your hand, whenever you close it, it's closing in a spiral inside of the square. A lot of people, they know about their angles, they know about, the 90 degrees, but I don't think that anyone has ever really noticed how Fibonacci can relate to your gloving and how it can actually help you find new angles and stay on grid and even come up with new crazy ideas. So my buddy Diego showed me how it fits to the human body. Now the mathematical sequence of numbers for Fibonacci goes 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 12, and so on and so forth. But in gloving, you don't really have to take it that far. But I'm going to show you how it does equate. So if you hold out your finger, 1 plus 1 equals 2, okay? Now believe it or not, these two knuckles are going to be the same length as that one knuckle. Your finger is the same length as your palm. Your arm from the inside of your wrist, your hand from the inside of your wrist to the inside of your shoulder is the same size as your hand. Okay? Same thing with the inside of your shoulder, with the inside of your elbow to your shoulder. It's the same size. 1 plus 1 equals 2. Now I'm going to move the camera back a little bit so you guys can see this. But if I stand up and if I bend at a tut angle, you'll notice that from my wrist to my shoulder is the same length as my waist to my shoulder. Okay? If I bend, you will notice that from my wrist to my elbow is the same length as my abdomen. It takes 2 hands to cover your chest. Okay? Now, the reason I was explaining it like that is because our bodies are geometrically designed, okay, to do these angles. I mean, obviously they weren't designed specifically for that, but our bodies are made in a way to where we can, okay? Now I'm going to teach you some easy cues to kind of keep some angles, and then I'm also going to kind of explain more so on how you can move across the grid and some other cool little fun stuff with it as well, okay? Now, as far as keeping your angles, okay, as long as you know, like, that this is going to be at a 90 degree angle and this is going to be at a 90 degree angle, then you know you should be okay. Now, there's something that I notice people do with their tutting that I think, I don't want to be rude about this, but it's kind of slop, and there's a cleaner way to go about it. There's times where glovers will move their head out of the way to bring the tut back. That's wrong, and the reason being is because you're breaking angle at that point. No matter how slick you try and move that head back, you're essentially breaking angle because your hand comes into contact. Now, if you bend, okay, obviously if you bend your hand this way, then yes, you can come around. But I notice kids will like do this like bend the head back thing. Don't do that, okay? The reason your arms come this way, okay, well, not the reason, but because of the fact that your arms only bend in certain directions, it's something that I found is simply bend your head down. Not only does it add a cool effect because you're doing something over the head, but you can actually do a cause and effect with it to where it kind of looks like a robotic movement. For example, so Wait, bring this back here for you guys because it's kind of a bad angle, but so if we're starting here in this position, we can do one of these to where it like cuts your neck down. Now I'm kind of pointing down at this point, but when you're coming up, you kind of like chopping off your head, bringing it down. Now notice how I'm bending my head parallel to my hand. Now the reason being is so that way I can easily bend my arm across without having to like jerk my head around or anything like that, because that will actually make your angles a bit sloppy. Now that was just a quick little side note, but as far as the math, as long as you know that where each section equates to as far as length, okay, and as far as like how far you know that they can bend, then I feel like you guys should be okay. It's just remember, you have to keep your 90-degree angles no matter where you're going, okay? And the reason being is because whenever somebody's watching you tut, they're looking at your joints. They're making sure that they're straight, you know? And by understanding the math behind your body, it's going to help you with your grid work. Now, I showed Pinky this little idea of mine, and well, not of mine, but that I was taught, and he took it a step further. Now obviously I already taught you about these two angles right here, or not these two angles, but these two knuckles equate to this knuckle. Well, he was taking it a bit further to where you can actually use all of this in here as a tut position, essentially speaking, because it all mathematically fits. Tutting with your digits, which very many people do, you know, or very few people do. Everybody's used to just the finger tuts, but not many people will actually mess with actual digit tuts, and just simply because they are hard to do, and they're kind of hard to see, and nobody really thinks about bending their hand at a perfect box right there. And obviously my pinky's a little retard mode right now, but you get the gist. Obviously you don't want to close your hands indefinitely unless you're trying to do a point, because then you can't really use these angles for much, you know. So just understanding the math behind it is going to really help you guys move across the grid. It'll also give you spatial awareness, believe it or not, subconsciously. That and practicing scales, which I won't go too deep into them because this isn't a full tutting tutorial. It's mostly just explaining the math behind it. But if you don't know what a scale is, you essentially start in one direction and then you bend your arm until you reach it all the way to the top, stopping at every intersection, bending your hand at every intersection, and then bringing it back down in that same order, but in reverse, and obviously doing them with both hands. But I really hope that you guys understood the whole Fibonacci ordeal that I'm trying to portray as far as showing the relevance between it and gloving. And just keep in mind that you don't have to follow the math of it throughout your whole show, but it is something to think about whenever you are labbing or thinking about doing some tech, or even if you're just trying to move across the grid, you know. Just keep in mind that it is something that will help you. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good one, guys.